Good morning, everyone. I tell a story about this brilliant scientist. He was sitting on a plane next to a simple guy. It was a long flight, and he was quite bored. So he turns to the simple guy, and he says, "Let's play a game." He says, "I'll ask you a question. If you can't answer it, you give me $5. Then you ask me a question. Because I'm such a brilliant scientist, if you could ask me a question that I don't know, I'll give you $100. So the guy says, "That's a good deal. Go ahead." So the scientist asks the simple guy, "How far is the sun from the earth?" Takes out $5, says, "I don't know." He gives him the $5. Now it's the simple guy's turn to ask this brilliant scientist a question. So he turns to the scientist and he says, "Which animal goes up a mountain with 4 legs and comes down with 3 legs?" The scientist is thinking, he finally says, "I don't know." He takes out a $100 bill, he gives it to him. Then he turns to the simple guy, he says, "What's the answer? Which animal is it?" Takes out a $5 bill and says, "I don't know." And he gives him back the $5. It says in Pirkei Avot, it says in Ethics of Our Fathers, who is a wise person? One who learns from everyone. True wisdom is when you realize you can learn from everyone. In this week's parsha, we have a story about Moshe and Aaron. Now, Moshe and Aaron were siblings, unlike all the siblings in Bereshit who had sibling rivalry. These were brothers who loved each other. And there was never rivalry. As a matter of fact, when Hashem came to Moshe at the burning bush and he said, "Go take the Jews out of Egypt," Moshe said, "What about my brother Aaron? He should do it. He's young, he's older." And God said, "Don't worry, he'll be happy that you got the job. He'll hug you, he'll kiss you, he'll rejoice over your mission." But there's one story in the whole Torah where they get into a disagreement. And not just a disagreement, but a heated disagreement. Which tells you, even if you have the best of terms with your siblings, once in a while it could happen that you could have a disagreement. What happened? It was the 8th day, the day by Yom HaShmini, the name of this week's parsha. Aaron and his children were inducted into the service of the temple. And on this day, a great tragedy occurred. The 2 sons of Aaron died. And Aaron conducting the service, and there was a goat that was offered on this day as a sacrifice because it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the instructions were that Aaron should eat from the flesh of the offering. And it says Moshe investigated, and he saw that Aaron didn't eat from the flesh of this goat, from the meat, but he burnt it entirely. And the Torah says that Moshe inquired what happened. Was that meat eaten? And he found out it was burnt. Vayitzov Moshe. Moshe got angry at his brother, and he says, "Why didn't you eat from the flesh as you were commanded to do?" And Aaron says to his brother, "Such a great tragedy befell me today. I lost my 2 children. Would God be pleased if I feasted and celebrated on such a day of tragedy and mourning and grief? And therefore I decided to burn the offering, not to eat it." And Moshe Rabbeinu, in his great humility, hears his brother, and by Yishma Moshe said, "You're right, you did the right thing. You did what God would have wanted you to do, which is not to celebrate and eat the meat on the day of the tragic loss of your 2 children." And here you see Moshe Rabbeinu losing it at his brother, getting angry, but then realizing his brother was right, and apologizing, so to speak, and saying, "You did the right thing, I was mistaken." Why is it that Moshe didn't see what Aaron saw? So our rabbis say that when Moshe goes to Egypt and the 2 brothers embrace, the King David describes that meeting and that kiss and that embrace as truth and kindness encountered one another, justice and peace kissed one another. Moshe Rabbeinu represents the paradigm of truth. Torah is the book of truth. Torah emet. Moshe emes v'Torah amos. From the perspective of truth, you got to eat the sacrifice. But Aaron represents kindness and compassion and mercy. And he says, 1 minute. Yes, the truth is I have to eat from the flesh. But what about my pain? What about my anguish? What about my suffering? How could I just feast on such a day? And therefore, it's the combination of truth and kindness. You know, they say the truth hurts. So what do? Not tell the truth? Of course you have to tell the truth, but you have to do it in a kind and a compassionate way that it doesn't hurt. So Moshe's truth, eat from the flesh. It's the right thing to do. And Aaron says, but you have to take human condition into the account. How do I feel on such a day? And Moshe says, "You're right. I didn't realize that." And sometimes we look at something only from the truthful perspective. We fail to see it from the compassionate perspective. And the Torah is, as we're going to say tonight around the Shabbos table, Torah chesed, a Torah of kindness. We always have to combine the attributes of Moshe, which is truth, with the attributes of kindness, and then we get the full picture. And sometimes we fail to see the other person's situation, and we don't have the right sensitivity. As we approach the holiday of Pesach, there's a beautiful story about a woman who came to a rabbi in the old shtetl and said, Rabbi, I have a halachic question. We're very poor, we can't afford wine for the 4 cups of wine, but we do own a cow. Are we allowed to halachically substitute 4 cups of wine with 4 cups of milk at the Seder? The rabbi says, halachically, it has to be wine, you can't use milk, but I'm going to give you some money to buy wine for the Seder. And he gives the woman 1,000 ruble. When the woman leaves, the Rebbitzin says to the rabbi, you know, a bottle of wine, 2 bottles of wine, 3 bottles of wine, 25 ruble, 50 ruble, why did you give her 1,000 ruble for wine? The rabbi says, you failed to hear what her real question was. She was too embarrassed to tell me she has no money to make Pesach. So she comes with a question, can you use milk instead of wine? If she has no milk, she has no meat, because you can't have milk and meat together. She has no meat, she has no fish, she has no fish, she has no matzah. What she was really saying is, I have no money to make Pesach. So I heard her real question and gave her 1,000 ruble for Pesach for our whole family. Sometimes we're so focused on, the rabbi would have said, no, not permissible, have a nice day. He would have missed the whole message of the conversation. It's not about the truth only, it's about the truth. But it's about the bigger picture, seeing the other person as a human being and having the rachmanis, the compassion, the chesed, combined with the emes, with the truth.